from the grassroots, connecting people and sharing ideas.
Hey, this is Arlene.
Hello, this is Grace.
And we are at our second segment. So, Grace, we are going to talk about student activism. This is in light with the recent Occupy UM.
And that's correct. And then the student movement in UM has been happening for some time, for the few months, regarding a lot of matters. And the students have finally warned and also said that they will actually take this matter to the court. And if this outcome of the meeting with the university vice chancellor is not in their favor.
Mm-hmm. Just to give a bit of a background why we are talking about the student activism and especially concerning the UM8. The UM8 are the 8 students who are part of the student union in University Malaya. They were charged by the university for not just organizing an event that was deemed illegal by the university authorities, but also to actually proceed with organizing the event. They invited Anwar Ibrahim in University Malaya to give a talk, and the crowd was so huge that people actually rushed into the compound and unlock the gate. Actually, they more like break in the gate. But in defense of the UM8, they are just trying to protect the voices of the students, because students should allow to have more freedom to organize events, to create more, to organize events that are more diverse in terms of the viewpoints, especially political viewpoints.
Well, it is actually a good news that students are involved in the political movement. But however, there was a
you're
tension.
From South Korea, right?
But there was a tension between, of course, the student and the government side, that students are restricted in terms of freedom of expression, and then that also leads to freedom of education in the university, also in the nation itself. That's when the student wanted to be vocal about their issues, and then when they also wanted to invite certain politicians to their university, but those were also restricted. That's when everything became a bit of more violent and then vocal about it.
Was it really that violent?
Violent because a few students were actually pushed away, like by the police force, and then they
you're talking about the Occupy UM?
Yes.
Yeah.
Occupy UM. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so after the incident where they were trying to get a politician to speak, an opposition politician to speak in UM, that it was unsuccessful, and but they still like proceed towards it, and then they break in and destroy a gate lock of the university gate, and the thing is, they were charged by the university. Each one of them were charged with being suspended a few semester, and also being charged with a few sum of money, and they refused to back off. What they did is they and a few students supporters actually camped out in the university compound to demand that the university to revoke the charges against them. That's why you mentioned there were police present, but even when the police were there to somehow destroy the whole campsite, they still proceed to camp outside.
They were very persistent.
They were very persistent. Only until 2 days ago, where they make a conclusion and ended the Occupy UM, but they still want to proceed with the court.
And then actually what they did was they gathered earlier morning, and they began their march about 9:30 a.m. and they had this huge slogan, and then the wording shouting out that, I hope I say this out correctly, it says, Hidup Mahasiswa, Bangkit Mahasiswa, Students Power, and Tolak HEM Dan Masuk Aku. So it means long live the students, rise up students, reject the Students Affairs Department, and abolish the Universities and University Colleges Act. So they are still very vocal, and that they really want to have this student movement towards these certain issues towards the government.
So this is the first time ever that the university students actually want to charge the university authorities for, want to charge in court for the whatever actions that the university has done towards them. But this is not the first time student activism has happened in recent times. If you still remember, Adam Adli, he famously took the flag of the country's flag down because he wasn't happy with the way the Najib's administration deal with the issue of AUKU and student activism. And also, if you still remember, a few years back, where the infamous UKM4, they observed the by-election, and the university found out that they were involved in opposition politics. That's where they were charged, and they were also being treated under the AUKU. But in a way that it seems student activism is going on larger and larger in terms of the movement.
Well, I don't know about you, Arlene, how you think about when it comes to the student movement and then what they want to really achieve out of this in terms of their opinions and then their freedom of expression, because they are sending their message to the government. And then where is this fine line when it comes to freedom of speech in this country, especially for university students?
Mm-hmm.
So what is your say in this, Arlene? Because you've been studying here and then you studied here in Malaysia, and you have experiences here. What is it like to see
you
the
studied
student
here
movement?
also, right?
Well, but it's a bit different because I was an international student. I can it's harder for me to be involved politically. Yeah, but as you being a Malaysian, what's your say when you see these students, being very vocal and also very persistent in their opinions?
It's funny because student activism was part of the Malaysian culture or Malaysian scene in the university back then in the 70s. It was quite synonym for for students to actually voice out their concerns in various forms of issues, not necessarily related to politics, but also related to ideologies, related to their welfare and all that. But since the formation of the Universities and University Colleges Act 1971, or is infamously called AUKU, it seems like for a while the student activism died down, or the student activism hasn't taken the direction of being more radical, politically radical. I still remember back then when I was a student, we were being taught that you just need to study hard, get good grades, that's it. Like you don't maybe you can participate in some co-curriculum or some student bodies and all that, but you are not expected to be politically involved in political parties or student movements that would jeopardize the university's name, quote unquote. So in a way, student activism has somehow risen up, but perhaps not as widespread as probably in other countries. I'm sure countries like South Korea and other more countries with greater democracy and free speech would provide more voices for the students to voice out their concerns.
Well, so the recent event that regarding UM8. Well, we mentioned shortly before, this is definitely regarding the invitation of opposite leader Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim to speak in the campus around 2 months ago, and it was restricted, and that's when the students started this movement. Well, the students still have around 12 days left to appeal against their punishment, but then these students' council president, who is Fahmi Zainal, told that when he and the other 7 were resorting to the legal action due to the university and administration's overbearing ego in refusing to lift the penalties in the face of Occupy UM campaign mounted by their peers.
What they did is very brave and something that
For
is
sure,
commendable.
yes.
But also, the biggest I would say devil in the whole situation is the fact that we still have AUKU, the University Act that I mentioned just now, which bans political parties. It explicitly permits students to become a member of any society, organization, body, or groups or persons, whether in or outside your university or in and outside Malaysia. So you are not allowed to be part of the political parties, any of it. But it's a bit unfair, isn't it? Because as students, you are not 18 years old. You're probably around 21, the age where you're allowed to vote.
Especially university students, they are all educated. They have their opinions.
They have the right to vote. So if you have the right to vote, why can't you have the right to know what is your political ideologies, political direction? What do you want? The kind of policy that you want the society to be, or even the very least, to protect the welfare of the students. And that's something that it might not be good for the country if all the government do is to curtail critical thinking and critical voices.
Well, I can agree with you that, Arlene, because, well, we have the voting system in Malaysia, and we do have the democracy system in Malaysia as well. And the students are allowed to vote, and then why not them studying about the government and be able to voice out and express their opinions regarding this?
So, in another way, I mean, if you look at the bigger picture, of course, my earlier comments, I am in favor of abolishing AUKU personally, because I was a student in Malaysia before. I felt that students have become such sheepish. In other ways, you are so used to the idea that you just go to university and then score good grades and that's it. And probably spend most of your life just be mindlessly active in things that doesn't matter to society.
Well, I think that's the case in Malaysia, but then compared to other countries, all this, I will call it, this is Asian education system, that you have to get a good grades and you have to be an ace in everything, not only in the academic studies, but other parts like art, performance, sports even. But it's after all, it's a matter of how well you are educated after that, and how well you can apply those theories into the practical side after you graduate. But it seems that in Malaysia, the practical part of this is very lacking.
It's very lacking. I mean, if you really look at the kind of quality that we have been churning out for the university for the graduates in Malaysia, the biggest problem, the biggest hurdle is not so much whether they can converse well in English or not, because I mean, Malaysia is not the only country where we have problem with speaking good English, especially when we are not native English speakers. But I think the biggest hurdle is critical thinking. People just want to be mindless, and they are so used to that kind of system where they are being spoon-fed with information. They don't need to think for themselves, because if they think too much, it might be too dangerous for them, or to the government.
Well, I think I'm on the same boat with you, Arlene, on this, because when the students are discouraged or when they are barred from expressing their views freely, definitely the countries will not have the better future, because we are the generations that they will build a nation in the future. And then when we are barred and when you're restricted, of course there are so many things that could have done, but then we cannot move forward because of that.
But my biggest concern on this situation that is developing right now is the fact that it's not so much whether the student is asking for greater voices or not. My biggest concern, because I think it is a great thing they're doing this. My biggest concern that the idea of asking for greater voices for the students to express themselves seems to fall into the cracks of partisan politics. When issues becomes partisan issue rather than issue that is universal, or issues that should be of a national concern, then usually government or opposition leader would take advantage, opposition parties would take advantage of this situation and make it as if it's their fight, when actually it's not their fight, it's the whole country's fight. I mean, if you're talking about freedom for students to voice out their concern, it shouldn't be seen as a cause for the opposition or for the government. It should be a cause for the student. And this is where it's a bit tricky in this situation, because from what I see, a lot of entities are capitalizing on this situation, trying to make it as if it's their cause, when it's not. It's the students' cause.
Well, it is a student goals, Arlene, but then this whole movement started off with the initial idea of inviting the politician to the university. So when you say it's a tricky, yes, it is tricky, because as much as this UM8 this movement is going on, there is this minority group is still in the university. They are against this movement as well.
And I want to ask you, like, how do students in South Korea usually would do? I mean, when it comes to a situation like this, would they just go and get would they just take things to their own hand, or would they actually, make the issue a partisan issue?
We will actually bring to the cause of student, meaning that we stand for our views and our opinions, and we are very strong when it comes to movement. And then when it doesn't work, then we become very violent in that sense, because we believe what we want to do
Maybe
is
it's not
for
Malaysian culture.
it's not for the Malaysian culture for sure, but it's what we created, and that's when we accelerated so fast in the past 50 years in the nation. Mainly because of what we believed, and then because of that we managed to improve in terms of education in Korea as well.
That's interesting, because at the same time you have North Korea, which is like, which create this stereotype that Koreans might be very meek and obedient towards their leader. But then you have South Korea, which is totally the opposite of North Korea when it comes to the attitude of the society. I can't help but to mention Hong Kong when it comes to student activism, because Occupy Hong Kong is the best example how even with so many entities trying to capitalize on this or voice out on this, but they know the main actor or the main focus of this movement is the students. It's not the politicians, it's not the media or whatever, it's the students. And the students also ensure that this is their cause to they want to empower the society to make sure that Hong Kong is completely independent and freedom from China's control. And this is something that I think a lot of Malaysian students are aspiring, hopefully to be like that.
And definitely the government has to become an ear for students to receive all those opinions, and then the thoughts and the views as well. But when those communication is blocked, it's definitely really hard for students in the one nation to voice out and to be heard what they want to say. And that's what's happening in Malaysia, and that's when the UM8 is created, and they are going for what they want to achieve.
I mean, looking at the bigger picture, to be very frank, if Malaysia were to move forward towards Vision 2020 or towards ASEAN Economic Community, things as simple as giving a voice to the students to voice up their whatever concerns or whatever opinions they have should not be something that government take it lightly and then like just curtail and thinking that students are not matured enough to do that. Because at the end of the day, if you will only have a future where you yourself mold. If the students are molding the younger generation to be a group of people who are unable to govern themselves, are unable to express their opinion, then the future of Malaysia will end up probably another dark age where we just listen and follow, we don't think.
Well, that's very sad. Well, because when it comes to sharing it, the critical view is very important. But what happened yesterday was student actually they moved their campus to the student affairs department in UM, and then Occupy UM also handed their memorandum to Deputy Vice Chancellor for Academic and International, who is Dr. Muhammad Hamdi Sukur, who also said the university was very open to hear what the students had to say. And also, in addition to that, he mentioned that we do sincerely want to address students' concern, but not even the vice chancellor can overturn the outcomes of disciplinary proceedings. That we have to follow the appeals process according to the rules.
So what's the way forward to this? I mean, we see a lot of students are now voicing out their concerns, although it's still like very small. I wouldn't say that the whole of Malaysian students are empowered. I would say that it's getting larger and larger, but the pace might not be as fast. But at the end of the day, like if student activism were to be a national concern, two things have to be in place. First is the government should either amend or repeal the University Act. It must ensure that there's a complete academic freedom and students' freedom to voice out their concern. Although we understand that, of course, in any institution, it has to have a set of rules, a set of regulation, but it shouldn't be to the extent of curtailing freedom. And secondly, I think when it comes to activism, it has to be beyond partisan politics. It has to be the concerns both the government's pro-government politicians and pro-opposition politicians, and also those who fall in between, the independents one, those neutral, those people who do not want to belong to any partisan. But when it comes to activism, it has to be a national concern, a collective concern.
When it comes to policy and rules, I can agree with your first point, because it's very important, because that draws the definitely defined and a fine line where students can stand. Because of this law that you mentioned, it was AKU, was created that restricts the university movement and act. Students are charged under this act and that they cannot do certain things. But with the removal of this act, definitely will open more. It will open more platforms for students to voice out and give the opinions. Whereas with these policies, we'll never expect the better movement among the students, not only from UM but also from other universities in Malaysia.
So that's all for our ABC focus, and with that, I hope all the best for the UM8 students. We hope that they would be able to receive and achieve justice.
And definitely, Dri and ASEAN, we will follow up regarding this movement, and then, like we said, all the best to the student movement.
And hopefully that Malaysia will see a better future, and students who are able to express their voices and not being curtailed.